Alexandria, Egypt, 48 BC, a city at the edge of the known world. A harbor where east meets west, where Greek merchants trade with Indian spice dealers, where philosophers debate the nature of reality, and in the heart of the city, a building unlike anything on Earth. The Library of Alexandria, not just a library. The library, the archive of human civilization. Every scroll worth preserving, every text of importance, every record of knowledge humanity had accumulated. 700,000 scrolls, all in one place. Mathematics from Babylonia, medicine from Egypt, philosophy from Greece, science from Persia, history from every corner of the known world, texts on astronomy.engineering, agriculture.law, art. Religion, everything. The library wasn't just a repository. It was a machine for civilization. Scholars came from across the world to study, to learn, to advance human understanding. And then Julius Caesar arrived. Fleeing political enemies, Caesar pursued his rival Pompey to Alexandria. When he caught up, Pompey was already dead. But Caesar decided to stay to impose order, to claim Egypt for Rome. The Alexandrians resisted. War erupted in the streets. Caesar's legions against the city's defenders. Battles raged through the harbor district, and fires broke out. Whether deliberately set or accidentally started, the flames spread through the docks. They reached the warehouses. They reached the buildings near the harbor. And they reached the library. Accounts from the time are fragmented, conflicting. Some say the entire collection burned. Some say only the outer buildings were destroyed. Some say most scrolls were saved. But everyone agrees on one thing: the library was diminished, damaged, changed forever. 700,000 scrolls reduced to something less. How many were lost that night? 100,000, 200,000, 300,000? We'll never know. Because when that fire burned, it didn't just destroy parchment and ink. It destroyed knowledge, lost forever, erased from human memory, medical texts that could have saved millions of lives, mathematical proofs that wouldn't be rediscovered for 1,000 years, historical records of entire civilizations, engineering blueprints for technologies we wouldn't reinvent until the Industrial Revolution. All ash. And the tragedy is that this was only the first fire. The library burned again and again and again, until finally there was nothing left. Before we talk about loss, we need to understand what was lost. The Library of Alexandria wasn't just big, it was comprehensive. Every scroll deemed important was collected there, copied, preserved, cataloged by the Pinax system, essentially the first library catalog ever created. Thousands of scholars worked there. Copyists, translators, librarians, their job, to preserve human knowledge. And they took it seriously. The library held medical texts, Hippocrates on anatomy, Galen on surgery, treatises on pharmacology, texts on diseases we still don't fully understand, surgical techniques that wouldn't be rediscovered for 1/500 years, herbal remedies, diagnostic methods. If even a fraction of these survived to the modern era, we might have skipped centuries of medical darkness. Mathematical works, Euclid's proofs, Archimedes' calculations, treatises on geometry, algebra, and what might have been early calculus. The library held the cutting edge of mathematical thought. Lose that, and you lose the foundation of scientific progress. Astronomical records, star charts, planetary observations, calculations of celestial mechanics so precise they wouldn't be matched again for over 1,000 years. The library held evidence that ancient astronomers understood the cosmos far better than we gave them credit for. Engineering blueprints, designs for aqueducts, water systems, mechanical devices. The Antikythera mechanism, a 2,000-year-old computer, proves that ancients built technologies we didn't know existed. How many more such devices were documented in the library? Historical records, accounts of civilizations, dynasties, wars, events that shaped the ancient world, entire histories, Egypt, Persia, India, preserved in scroll form. Lose these, and you lose the ability to verify history itself. philosophy and literature. Plato, Aristotle, Sophocles, Homer. Not just the famous works, but alternative versions. Lost plays, alternate arguments. Texts that challenged orthodoxy and expanded human thinking. Foreign knowledge. Texts in Egyptian, Persian, Indian, and Chinese. The library translated and preserved knowledge from cultures across Eurasia, a window into civilizations we now barely understand. The scale was staggering. To put it in perspective, the Library of Alexandria held more books than existed in all of Europe combined for the next 1,000 years. It was the repository of a golden age, a moment when human knowledge was being systematized, organized, preserved. And then it burned, not all at once, but in pieces, over decades, over centuries. Each fire taking more, each destruction erasing irreplaceable knowledge, until finally there was almost nothing left. Here's what most people don't understand about the Library of Alexandria. It didn't burn once, it burned multiple times. Over centuries, different fires, different causes, each one erasing more knowledge. 48 BC, Caesar's War. Julius Caesar's legions clash with Alexandrian forces in the harbor district. Fires spread. The outer buildings of the library complex catch flame. Accounts are conflicting. Some say only the dockside warehouses burned. Perhaps 40,000 scrolls lost. Others claim the main structure was damaged. Still others insist the entire collection was incinerated. The truth, we don't know exactly how many scrolls were destroyed, but it was significant enough that later historians noted it as a catastrophe. The library survives, but it's wounded. 1st century AD, gradual decline. The library doesn't recover fully. Roman rule changes the nature of Alexandria. Scholarship continues, but the Golden Age is ending. Scrolls aren't being replaced as quickly. The collection begins to stagnate. 270 AD, Aurelian's siege. The Roman Emperor Aurelian besieges Alexandria to crush a rebellion. Fire sweeps through the city. The Bruchaion, the royal quarter where the library is located, is damaged. Another blow, more scrolls lost. 391 AD, the Pagan Purge. By now, Christianity has become the dominant religion in the Roman Empire. Pagan texts are seen as heresy. Pagan knowledge is seen as dangerous. Theodosius issues an edict. Pagan temples and their collections are to be destroyed. The library, associated with pagan philosophy and false knowledge, becomes a target. Zealous Christians torch the buildings. Scrolls are deliberately burned. Centuries of accumulated knowledge, deemed unchristian, are systematically incinerated. This is the real catastrophe. Not accident, but deliberate destruction. 642 AD, the final blow. By this time, only fragments of the library remain. The main collection has been reduced to scattered texts hidden in monasteries or private collections. Arab forces conquer Alexandria. The remaining library buildings are destroyed. According to legend, the Caliph orders the destruction of the last books. The reasoning: if these books agree with the Quran, we don't need them. If they disagree with the Quran, we don't want them. Whether this specific account is true or not, the library is effectively gone. Over 600 years of destruction, multiple civilizations, multiple religions, multiple agendas, each one erasing pieces of human knowledge, until finally there's almost nothing left, the death by 1,000 cuts. The tragedy of the library is that it didn't end in one cataclysmic moment. It would have been better if it had. One massive fire all lost at once. Clear cause, clear victim. Instead, the library died slowly, attacked from multiple directions, by soldiers, by zealots, by indifference, by changing times. Each generation took a little more. Each new power destroyed what the previous power had preserved, and no one stopped it. No scholar organized a rescue mission. No emperor ordered protection. No civilization collectively said, "This matters, preserve it." The library burned not because no one had the power to save it, but because no one cared enough to try. Close your eyes. Imagine a world where the Library of Alexandria survived intact. All 700,000 scrolls preserved, cataloged. available to scholars for the last 2,000 years. What would be different? Medicine. Galen and Hippocrates' medical texts survived, but only partially. Fragments. Later, scholars had to guess at what the ancients knew, but in the library, complete medical treatises existed. Surgical techniques, pharmacology, anatomical knowledge. If the library had survived, medieval Europe wouldn't have lost 1,000 years of medical progress. Doctors in the 1600s wouldn't have believed that bloodletting cured disease. Surgeons wouldn't have had to relearn basic anatomy that was already documented in ancient scrolls. How many millions died from treatable diseases because we lost that knowledge? Mathematics. Archimedes developed calculus. Not exactly, but close enough that historians debate whether ancient mathematics was on the verge of discovering it. If the library survived, mathematicians in the Renaissance might have had access to texts that accelerated the development of calculus by centuries. That knowledge underlies physics and engineering, modern technology. We might have built the Industrial Revolution 500 years earlier. Astronomy. Ancient astronomers tracked Venus with precision we didn't match until telescopes. They calculated planetary positions. They understood orbital mechanics at a level that shouldn't have been possible with the naked eye. What texts in the library explained their methods? What knowledge did they possess? If that library survived, we might have understood the cosmos centuries before Copernicus and Galileo. Engineering. The Antikythera mechanism, a 2,000-year-old computer, proves that ancients built mechanical devices of stunning sophistication. How many more such devices were designed and documented in the library? Water systems, aqueducts, mechanical calculators, machines we didn't rediscover until the Industrial Revolution. If the library survived, we would have blueprints, instructions, knowledge of how to build technologies that took us 1,500 years to reinvent. History. Entire civilizations vanished from our understanding because their records were only in the library. The library held accounts of Egypt, Persia, India, China, alternative histories, contradictory accounts that help us understand bias and perspective. Lose those, and you lose the ability to verify what actually happened in the ancient world. The incalculable loss. Here's what destroys me about this. We don't know what we lost. That's the real tragedy. It's not just the scrolls that burned. It's the knowledge that we don't even know existed. Some scholar in Alexandria, 2,000 years ago, might have documented something revolutionary. A medical technique, a mathematical proof, a historical record that would have changed everything. And it burned, and we never knew it existed. So we can't even mourn it properly. We can't say, we lost X. We can only suspect that something profound was erased. The library's destruction isn't just a loss of what we know was there. It's the loss of what we'll never know was there. Not everything burned. It would be easier if it had cleaner. A total loss, rather than fragments that haunt us with incompleteness. But some scrolls survived, some knowledge escaped. Hidden in monasteries, copied by devoted monks. Preserved in private collections. These survivors are clues, breadcrumbs leading us back to what was lost. The monastic archives. Christian monks, despite their role in destroying pagan texts, also preserved some knowledge. They copied medical texts, mathematical works, philosophical treatises. Why? Because they valued learning. Because some monks recognized that knowledge itself, regardless of its origin, was worth preserving. In monastery libraries across Europe and the Middle East, fragments of the library's collection survived. Not complete works, but pieces. Enough to rebuild some understanding of what existed. The Arab preservation. When Arab scholars conquered Alexandria, they didn't destroy everything. Yes, they burned some texts, but many were preserved, translated. Studied Arab mathematicians inherited Greek geometry. Arab physicians inherited Galenic medicine. Arab astronomers inherited ancient star charts. If not for Arab scholarship during the Middle Ages, entire branches of ancient knowledge would have vanished completely. The rediscoveries. During the Renaissance, European scholars began seeking out ancient texts. They traveled to monasteries, they negotiated with Arab scholars. They recovered lost works: Aristotle, Plato, Euclid, Homer. But here's the tragedy. They were finding copies of copies, incomplete versions, texts missing entire sections, alternative versions that contradicted each other because copyists had made mistakes over the centuries, and they had no way to know what was still missing. What we know we lost. From the survivors, we can infer what perished. Medical texts reference works we no longer have. Mathematicians cite proofs that vanished. Historians quote sources that burned, fragments of fragments. The library held a complete map of ancient knowledge. We're left with a jigsaw puzzle missing 90% of the pieces. The real survivors. The true survivors weren't scrolls. They were ideas. Concepts lived on in the minds of scholars. Techniques were passed down orally. Knowledge persisted in practical application. A doctor using methods they learned from a text copied from an ancient scroll. But knowledge transmitted through human memory is fragile. It corrupts, it distorts, it gets forgotten. A scroll can last 2,000 years unchanged. A technique passed down orally? It lasts maybe 100 years before someone misunderstands and corrupts it. We lost so much just because knowledge couldn't survive the transition from written to oral to written again. The monks who saved us. There's a particular irony in the fact that monks who participated in burning pagan texts also saved fragments of the ancient world. The same monasteries that destroyed heretical knowledge also preserved essential knowledge. And they did it not because they understood its full value, but because they believed that learning, any learning, was sacred. If not for that contradictory impulse, destroying what they deemed dangerous while preserving what they deemed useful, almost nothing would have survived. We owe our connection to the ancient world to monks whose names we'll never know, who spent lifetimes copying scrolls by candlelight, who preserved knowledge they often didn't fully understand, and we repaid them by mostly forgetting they ever did it. The library didn't just die from fire, it died from indifference. Every empire that ruled Alexandria had a choice: protect the library or ignore it. They ignored it. The Romans. After Caesar's first fire, Rome could have rebuilt the library to its former glory. They had the money, the manpower. The engineers, they didn't. Successive emperors invested in theaters, baths, monuments to their own greatness. But the greatest monument of all, a library that held the mind of the ancient world, was left vulnerable. No walls, no standing army. No imperial decree saying, "This is untouchable." The Christians. When Christianity rose to power, the library was seen as dangerous. It held pagan texts, heretical philosophies, competing cosmologies, alternative creation stories. To the new authorities, that wasn't knowledge, it was threat. So they attacked the source of alternative truth, not with debate, with fire. Scrolls weren't just burned accidentally, some were burned deliberately. Because controlling knowledge is the fastest way to control people. If you can destroy the books that disagree with you, you don't have to argue with them. You can pretend they never existed. The zealots. Every age has its fanatics. People who believe certainty matters more than truth. That doubt is dangerous. That questions are crimes. Those are the people who lit the torches. Not because they hated knowledge, but because they feared it. The library represented something they couldn't control. A place where competing ideas were allowed to exist side by side. To a zealot, that's intolerable. The cowards. But the most dangerous people weren't the zealots. They were the cowards who watched and did nothing. The governors, the generals, the rich merchants, the philosophers who saved their own skin instead of saving the shelves. People with power. People who could have acted, but didn't. Because standing between a torch and a scroll is risky, and silence is easy. The pattern. This isn't just about Alexandria. Over and over throughout history, the House of Wisdom in Baghdad burned in 1258. The Mayan codices were destroyed by Spanish priests. Countless indigenous libraries were wiped out by colonizers. Each time, the same pattern. Knowledge is attacked, zealots cheer. Cowards look away, and centuries later we call it a tragedy, as if no one could have stopped it. They could have, they just didn't. That's the real horror of the Library of Alexandria. Not that it burned, but that humanity let it. And we are doing it again. The Library of Alexandria burned 2,000 years ago. We learned nothing because we're destroying knowledge right now, in real time, with our own hands. The digital paradox. We have the technology to preserve everything. Every book, every document, every piece of human knowledge. Cloud storage, digital archives, redundancy systems. We can preserve knowledge forever, and we're failing catastrophically. The forgotten digital libraries. Websites disappear. Entire archives vanish when a server crashes. Academic papers locked behind paywalls so expensive that even universities can't access them. The Internet Archive tries to preserve the web. But it's fragile. One lawsuit, one government order, one funding crisis, and centuries of digital knowledge could vanish. We're creating a new Library of Alexandria, but we're building it on sand. Corporate knowledge monopoly. Google.Amazon. Facebook, Microsoft. These companies hold enormous amounts of human knowledge, but it's private, it's controlled, it can be deleted. A company changes policy, data is purged. Millions of documents disappear. We've handed the role of librarian to entities that answer to shareholders, not to the preservation of human knowledge. The book burning never stopped. In 2023, libraries across America removed books from shelves, challenged titles, banned authors. In Turkey, censorship restricts access to books deemed politically dangerous. In China, entire libraries of texts are unavailable to the general population. The zealots never went away. They just got more sophisticated. Now they use algorithms instead of torches. But the goal is the same. Control what people can know. Academic paywalls. Scientists discover something crucial. They publish in a journal. But the journal charges $30 to read one article. $30 for knowledge that might save lives. That might solve problems. Only rich institutions can afford it. Poor countries, researchers without university backing, they're locked out. We're burning knowledge not with fire, but with commerce. We're saying, this knowledge matters, but only if you can pay. Social media deletion. A person shares knowledge on social media. Years of documentation, research, videos, records. Then the platform removes it, bans the account, deletes the content. Thousands of hours of work vanish in seconds, and we accept it because the company owns the platform. They make the rules, we're burning books. We're just not calling it that. The real crisis. The Library of Alexandria burned because invaders and zealots destroyed it. But modern libraries are burning because we're choosing to let them. Because we prioritize profit over preservation. Because we trust corporations to be our historians. Because we've forgotten what it felt like when knowledge burned. The warning: if the power goes out tomorrow, if the servers crash, if a solar flare wipes out the grid, what survives? Not much. Most of human knowledge is digital now. No redundancy, no backup, no monks copying it by candlelight to ensure it survives. We are more vulnerable than Alexandria ever was, and we don't even know it. The Library of Alexandria is burning again. It's just happening slower, so slowly we don't notice, until one day we realize entire fields of knowledge have disappeared. Entire perspectives have been erased. Entire histories have been rewritten. And we'll ask, how did we let this happen? The same way we let it happen 2,000 years ago, by doing nothing. The Library of Alexandria is gone. We can't rebuild it. We can't recover what burned. We can't resurrect 2,000 years of erasure. But we can learn, if we're brave enough, the lesson. Knowledge is fragile, not because it's weak, but because power fears it. Power wants to control what people think, what they believe, what they know. The easiest way to do that? Destroy the sources, burn the books, delete the files, erase alternative perspectives. The library burned not because it was inevitable, but because those in power allowed it. And we are allowing it now. What must change? First, decentralize knowledge. Don't put everything in one server, one company, one system. Mirror every crucial piece of human knowledge across multiple platforms, multiple countries, multiple systems. Make it impossible to erase. Second, make knowledge free, not locked behind paywalls, not trapped in corporate databases, not controlled by algorithms designed to maximize profit. Knowledge is a human right. It should be accessible to everyone. Third, protect archives, fund libraries, support librarians, create redundancy, preserve everything, not because it's profitable, but because it matters. The monks who copied scrolls by candlelight understood something we've forgotten. Preservation is sacred work. Fourth, resist censorship. All of it from governments, from corporations, from zealots. Let people read. Think, question. Disagree. A society that bans books is a society afraid of truth. Fifth, archive the internet now, before it's too late. Download important content. Print it. Preserve it in forms that will survive technological collapse. Because the servers will fail, the companies will dissolve, the grid will go down eventually, and we need to know what survived. The real message. The Library of Alexandria is a monument to what we lose when we stop fighting for knowledge. It's a grave marker for millions of lost ideas. It's a warning. This can happen to you. But it's also a hope, because knowledge survived. Fragments escaped. Monks preserved. Scholars recovered. Humanity did eventually rebuild some of what was lost. Not all. Never all. But enough to remind us of what had existed. Enough to inspire us to reach higher. If we're willing to do it again, we can survive the burning of our modern library. But only if we act now. Only if we stop trusting corporations to preserve knowledge. Only if we stop accepting that some information is too dangerous to know. Only if we collectively decide this matters. The final truth: the Library of Alexandria burned because one generation let it. Our libraries are burning now for the same reason. We have a choice. We can watch in silence as knowledge vanishes behind paywalls, behind censorship, behind corporate algorithms. Or we can be the generation that says, no, no more burning, no more erasure, no more silence. The monks who saved fragments of the library didn't have modern technology. They didn't have servers or the internet. They had dedication. They had belief that knowledge mattered. And they did it anyway. We have better tools, we have more resources. We have global communication. If we choose to use them, if we choose to preserve, if we choose to fight, then maybe, unlike Alexandria, our knowledge survives. Maybe historians 2,000 years from now will study our era and say, they almost lost everything, but they fought back. That's the choice in front of us. Not whether to remember Alexandria, but whether to become Alexandria. The library is burning. The question is, will you help put out the fire?